All right, everybody, welcome to another Lunchtime Bites on this Wednesday, 16th of September. It's a month till my birthday. I'm sure you all really wanted to know that bit of information, but maybe pop it in your diary, see how you go. Send me a happy birthday. So today we are going to talk about how green is your thumb? Gardening tips from a pro with special guest Flemings, and we have the lovely Paige with us. Guest speaker, Paige Fleming. Paige, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. Yeah, really, it's a beautiful spring day here in the Dandenong Ranges. So I'm all about gardening.
I love it. So before we get cracking, tell me a little bit about yourself, what you do, how you got to where you are, and a little bit about, I guess, Flemings and what you do.
I'll try and give you the quick version. My my background originally actually was in writing, and I started off as a journalist actually, way back. And my parents actually come from an orchard in regional Victoria, up in the fruit bowl of the Shepparton region. So I grew up in a beautiful fruit orchard full of apples and pears and peaches and apricots and all sorts of beautiful fresh fruit. And I went into actually PR eventually and started working as a media consultant and media specialist for the property development industry, was where I ended up specialising. And at that time I met the very famous tree guru Wes Fleming, and our romance bloomed, and we're a great team together. And when we got married, he said, "Well, that's it. You're going to work here with me now." I was like, "Cool." So for the last sort of 10, 15 years, we've been working away together, and we're very, very proud of Flemings and our family and the beautiful family of 200 plus people that work with us, and what we do every day.
That's great. Love flourished.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so let's get cracking into today's presentation, Paige. Look, as you guys can see on the slide there, the main topics that we'll be covering is going to be top trends in landscapes and gardens, commonly asked questions for new homeowners and beginner gardeners, and tips on using your garden to its fullest potential. So let's go from the top. Paige, what are some of the hottest trends you are seeing across landscaping and gardening right now?
Actually, it was funny when we first started talking about this presentation today, and that question came up as a potential. I was like, well, everything's hot right now. It's everything is going crazy. This has been a really unprecedented time, as everyone knows, with COVID, and it's been a really trying time for, not just here in our lockdown in Victoria, but nationally and certainly the world over. But there are some silver linings in all of that, and we have to take those silver linings. And for us at Flemings, what we've seen is that the mandate to stay at home has certainly refocused people on the garden, and that's such a beautiful thing. It's good for the soul, it's good for our hearts, it's good for our bodies, it's good for there's so many things to get into the garden, and it looks like people are doing that on force at the moment, and we're rapt about it. So at the moment, people are just doing lots of different things in the garden. They're maintaining, they're refreshing, but one of the big things that they're doing is creating edible gardens. So that's veggie patches and small orchards, home orchards. They want to produce things in their garden that can be consumed or for their joy. So that's been a really lovely thing, and that's been a consistent trend actually happening over the last few years. But right now, I think the whole status of having to consider being locked out and not being able to be out and about as much has made people really want to have their own edible space at home. The other thing. Oh,
I was just going to say, my mother-in-law is trying to grow some cherry tomatoes at the moment as well. So we've been watching, YouTube videos on how to do that.
Oh, look, there's nothing better than growing your tomatoes at home. There's not. It's so great. But there's so many options these days what you can do in the garden. It doesn't have to just be a tomato plant. It can be so many more things. But when it comes to ornamentals, the big thing that we're seeing is colour. You know, gone are the days a few years ago, it was all about green and white or purple and white. Now it's just give us colour. Whatever colour you've got, we want reds, we want pinks, we want purples, we want, you know, purple foliage. It's people just want to see a big injection of colour in their garden, and that seems to be the trend at the moment.
Awesome. Cool. All right, let's move on to the next question, which kind of flows onto what you were talking about. It says, I want to add some colour to my garden. What is the best way to do that?
Yeah, well, right now is the time to put colour into your garden. One of my favourite times of year, because, you know, after a big long winter, and I'm not a winter person, so when spring hits and there's all these gorgeous flowers popping out everywhere, I just get so excited. And now is a great time for that. So we're seeing beautiful ornamental fruit trees. So typically fruit trees that are grown for their ornamental value and not their fruit value, and they don't fruit, or they fruit in a very minor way. So things like flowering pears, also known as pyrus, or prunus, which are things like ornamental plums, or even persica, which is an ornamental peach, malice, which is ornamental, or crab apples, they do produce a little bit more fruit than some of the other varieties, but they're not really edible. You can make some jellies from them, but they're the types of things that will produce a lot of flower in your garden in early spring. So right now, if I was to look out my window at home, where I'm sometimes home working at the moment, I see a beautiful cercis tree, which is just absolutely going crazy with these beautiful little pink pea-like flowers that have sprung all over its branches. My snow fountains, which are a weeping cherry, are in full bloom right now and looking gorgeous. I've got some pink snow fountains that are going crazy right now. And it's just so exciting because the bees pop out, everything's happening, the garden is just looking like it just wants to come alive, and I feel good, and everyone should get at least one flowering tree in spring in their garden, because it's just makes you feel alive again after winter.
Awesome.
I don't know if you want me to add any more to that.
No, I was just going to say, I didn't know you had ornamental fruit trees that you couldn't eat. So that's a learning thing for me. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, well, in many estates, actually, if you're driving down into new estates, one of the big trees are pyrus, and pyrus are an ornamental pear tree. So they're coming into their spring blossom now, and they're really big. But there's so many other great options. You know, you don't have to stick to pyrus. There's just so many. And if you go to top 10, Fleming's top 10 trees on the website, or we have a little booklet like this, you can go to a category called flowering trees, and there's so many options there. So I'd highly recommend that if you're looking for a flowering tree.
Awesome. Okay. Next one. I love being outdoors, but I'm not much of a gardener. Any tips for amazing low maintenance option?
Yeah, look, this is something that comes across all the time. I'm always being asked about, you know, low maintenance. I'm not a keen gardener, or I don't know what to plant, and I'm not really good at it. And so what people tend to do, because they're a little bit frightened of it, or they don't want to pull weeds and whatnot, is tend to go to less, and less is more. But if you actually if you do what Wes and I do, because we're not particularly keen on pulling weeds out of our garden either. So what we do is we mass plant. So if you get into your garden bed and you put as many plants as you can possibly put in there, generally happens is that it suppresses the weeds naturally, and you don't even have to look at that again. And what we did at home is one of our garden beds, where it was connecting a garage to our back door. We had a huge garden bed there. When we first planted that out, we just overplanted it. We didn't really worry about how big these things were going to get or what they would do long term, within reason. we just planted lots of perennials, annuals, some shrubs, some very small trees like some weeping aces. And over the years, what that garden bed has done is it's kind of grown into itself. So in the early days, it did lots of things with the small things like lamb's ear. We got the ground covers going, lots of things like violets, and we put in lots of dichondra, we put in salvia, we put in echiums, we put in a whole heap of different things like this. But we also put in smaller stock of loropetalums. We put in some aces, but they all had to sort of grow into themselves. And what happened is, over time, the small things that were in there to, sort of taking centre stage in the early days are now not even there anymore. And you've got to sort of let them do that and just let a garden have its life. But I don't think I've ever weeded that garden bed, never once. But if people are worried about maintaining lawns and don't want to maintain lawns, there's another way you can actually do that. You can think about some really great ground covers, particularly in areas that maybe are a bit wet and don't grow lawn very well. You can think about baby tears in that area, or a ground cover called pratia. There's dichondra. There's a lot of different options if you're really wanting to be very hands-off when it comes to maintaining. You don't have to stick to white pebbles or sand or no garden bed. There's lots of ways to inject an amazing garden bed and never have to lift a finger.
I thought you were going to say concrete then.
No concreting. Highly disrecommend concrete.
That's good for me. I like the idea of gardening, and I'm not much of a green thumb. I'm more of a moisturized thumb, so I always get scared of it.
Don't be scared, because you know what, plants are amazing. They just do their own thing. And sometimes you can even put in some things that are a little bit confused. Am I a weed or am I not a weed? And then no one really knows, so don't worry about it. Don't pull it out, it'll be fine.
The circle of life in the plant world.
That's right.
Awesome. Okay, when it comes to growing fruit at home, what is best for introducing edibles in a small garden? I think this will be a popular topic. I think everyone, like you said, at the moment is loving having their own fruit and veg and spices in the garden.
Yeah, that's so true. It is a big trend right now, and it's something that we can barely keep up with when we look at our fruit stock coming through the garden centre or the nursery. One thing that is a really good way to inject some fruit into your home garden is by looking at the compact friendly varieties. So we have a range called the Trixie Tree range. Now this is probably one of the few real miniature trees. So this is grown on naturally very dwarfing stock. So these are the smallest dwarfs. So we have a range called Trixie, then you have dwarf trees, they're bigger again, and then you have a standard fruit tree. So when we look at the Trixie trees, some of those will only grow to 1.5 metres high. Very, very compact, very small. They don't need to be pruned. They don't need to be really do anything except for just, maintain them and make sure that they're free of pest and disease. But otherwise they're so easy. And these little guys, we have peaches and nectarines and apples and pears, cherries. There's so many great options in this range, and it's a really exciting little tree. So cute. They're so cute. You can pop them in a pot. Of course, if you put any tree in a pot, you have to be aware that your lifespan is not going to be as long as it would be if it was in the ground. But these guys will do a really great job in a pot for quite some time. So they're really flexible. If you're renting, you can pop one in a pot and move it around with you. If you're having to house jump, they can go on balconies. Lots of options. As long as there's sun, they'll be happy. And the same for the ballerinas. The ballerinas are a very upright growing. So when you first see them as a small tree, they basically look like a stick, and the apples will grow up the pole, basically. So they're long, skinny, and very upright growing apple trees, and very, very great. As they grow older, they will get multiple stems, but they all grow upright. So they're very, very, very vertical, and they won't take a lot of your lateral space up. So if you're looking for something that's not going to encroach on other things, think about a columnar or a skinny range. So we have an apple and a peach in the skinny range, and they're very, very naturally upright growing fruit trees.
Awesome. All right, now I think we're going to get a little bit of a hurry on because we're running out of time.
Sorry.
No, that's all good. Everyone's enjoying this at home, I'm sure. How do I decide what to include in my planting? There are so many options.
Yeah, I'll try and be quick. Look, there's just so many things. Sometimes we get confused. We jump online and, oh my gosh, what do I choose? What do I do? Probably about 10 years ago or so, Wes and I felt that people needed a little bit of help because we were getting so many questions about, oh my gosh, what should we choose? What should we do? So we created the top 10 tree guide as a way of pulling together a really quick way for people to select a really good quality tree. So we've been growing trees for 100 years, and Wes, knows a thing or two about trees. So we thought, well, we'll put together this catalogue of different categories. So we've got flowering trees, we've got avenue trees, narrow trees, tough and hardy trees, purple foliage, weepers, and we've categorised 10 of the best trees or varieties that suit that category, and in our experience are the best that you can possibly buy in these categories. And it's just a really contained way of being able to explore what you might want, and have some sort of recommendation against it. So, in that we will explore also new products and different things that maybe people haven't been exposed to before. So in the orchard space, for example, we've been introducing great new varieties for a long time, but people just sort of naturally refer to the Granny Smith apple that they were growing up with, or, something that is familiar to them. So we developed the Pick of the Crop Guide, which does the same thing as the top 10 trees. It gives you a really quick snapshot of what we think are the best trees, and includes lots of new varieties, but it also includes all those, all of the tried and true guys that have been around forever, like the Moore Park apricot, which is just one of the best homegrown varieties that you can get for that, real apricot flavour. You can't go past a Moore Park. However, if you're looking for something like a nectarine, think about some of the new naturally bred, hand-pollinated crossbred fruit, which are amazing. These guys, and the exciting thing about these guys, they've come from breeding programs in the States. We come out here, we trial them for about 10 years before we put them on the market. But in Australia, we have a much smaller marketplace, so we can't release everything. So we have to be really, really choosy about what we put on the market. So, if you're buying a plum scrumptious, for example, which is one of our new releases that we released last year, this guy is amazing. He tastes, oh my gosh, off the charts. If you want a great tasting piece of fruit that you can grow at home, you've got to try a plum scrumptious. So these are the sorts of things, don't be afraid to look at something that you haven't heard of before. Granny Smiths are Granny Smiths, they've been around forever, but why not try a Crimson Crisp or a Pixie Crunch, because these guys are really maintenance friendly. They have a high resistance to black spot and apple scab, so they're great varieties for growing at home. But there's, try Pick of the Crop and top 10 what we've developed to help people make those decisions.
Awesome. Look forward to reading that, Paige.
Yep.
Myself included. All right, let's go. We're gonna fly through this one. How can I use my landscape/garden to get the most out of the space and ensure it's functional?
Okay, so look, zoning areas can be as easy or as complicated as you want it to be. I think you can use black or dark foliage plants to do that really effectively, because they can create a real depth field within your garden really quickly. So if you look at the picture that's on the screen right now, the backdrop there is a purple fagus. Now that purple fagus, when you put that in a garden space, is a really dense, thick, it's a very, very big tree, trust me. But using purple foliage as a backdrop will allow you actually to move into different spaces within the garden. And I think it's a really clever way of doing it. And it's one that not many people have thought of or do, but it's something that I love to see. The other way you can do dark foliage is that you can put in front of it lighter foliage things, so your garden really pops with colour. If you're putting some really bright colours in front of it, it just pops out. It's a great way to create a little room, if you will, in amongst other things.
Awesome.
Was I quick enough?
Yeah, unbelievable. So before I tell everyone what's coming up next week, thank you so much for your time, Paige. Really informative. It's a really good topic as well. All of us, like you said, have been at home and looking at our house and what's going on. And then obviously we go to our garden and we think, gee, we can do a lot more here. So all of this has been really good to I guess, guide us into what we can do in our garden space. So thank you so much for your time and for participating today. Really appreciate that.
Thanks, Pat. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Awesome. So guys, next week is the final webinar of the series. It'll be on working with builders to choose the right home for you, in capitals. The guest speaker will be Alan from Burbank, and that's going to be next Wednesday, 23rd of September at midday. Thank you everyone so much for spending time with us here today. If you have any questions or you want to get in touch, you can email us yourlanddevelopments@melbourne@yourland.com. You can also message email Paige at mail@flemings.com.au. So guys, thank you so much. Have a lovely rest of your Wednesday. Enjoy the sun. Cheers. Bye. Thanks, Paige.
Bye.